Please join me in giving a warm Reboot Congress welcome to House Democratic Whip Steny Hoyer.
Thank you, Senator. Yeah, I brought my own, just in case you didn't give me a mic. Good morning. Good morning. How's everybody doing? Why are you inside? Have you been outside? This is some of the best weather Washington's going to have, so we're missing that. But thank you very much for allowing me to be here. Leader McCarthy, I think, is coming here shortly. He will be addressing you. He and I work together on this issue, and he does a wonderful job. Seamus, thank you very much for that introduction. I'm going to try to tell others that, how can you tell me no, huh? Some people have found a way to do that, apparently, from time to time. But this is an extraordinarily important effort that you're about. Frankly, we are at a very troubled time in our country. All of us know that. We are focused on so much that is negative in our country. And the opinions of our public are so negative as it relates to government generally. They may have specific focuses, conservatives, liberals, whatever, conservative focuses, but there is a great sense of negativity and frustration and fear about what's happening in their government. And it is their government, our government, the people's government. And to the extent that they have more information, my view is they will be less fearful and they will be more positive. Now, everybody doesn't agree with that, as we all know, because there are many who try to restrict access to information, restrict access to knowledge. But in my view, the more knowledge, the truth shall set you free, according to the Bible. And information, frankly, and I've been involved in government a long time, and government works much better, is much more honest than people give it credit. And therefore, my view is if they know more, they will have more confidence. I want to thank the Open Government Foundation for hosting this event this year. And I want to thank Lincoln Network for joining them as a partner. Pasha, my new dear friend, Pasha, who got me into the room here, and she works with Lincoln, and thank you, Pasha, for the role that you've played in putting this event together. Reboot Congress 2017's byline is Modernizing the First Branch of Government. Now, it's the first branch of government because it's in Article 1, because the Founding Fathers thought it was the legislative body, the representatives of the people. Now, of course, one of the branches was originally the representatives of the states, not of the people, elected by the legislatures, not by the people. And so it is the people's house that originally was the Founding Fathers' concept of the direct representatives, which is why we're called representatives, not senators, representatives of the people. I consider myself an institutionalist. Frankly, I think I'm perceived as an institutionalist, someone who cares deeply not only about politics, which I do, and policies, but about the great institution that the United States Congress, an institution that I've been so honored to serve these past 36 years. Over my years in office, I have seen the House of Representatives make great strides across many areas, such as diversity and responsiveness to the public. Now, before I got there, we went on C-SPAN. The Senate did not go on C-SPAN. As a matter of fact, it took them about, I think, 6 years after the House went on C-SPAN, and then the senators started saying, all those House members are getting a lot of exposure, and we're not getting that. Now, senators really don't care about exposure, as you know, about people knowing what they do. But they did go to C-SPAN. And that was a great step forward in one sense, in that people could actually see, not have to come to Washington, not have to sit in the galleries, not have to be told about, but actually see the debate. Now, to some degree, that was good, and to some degree, it was sort of ad hominem discussions that we hear on the House floor from time to time, and somewhat disconnected because the debate on the floor is not always connected, and obviously 1 minute and 5 minutes, and everybody has their own perspective. 435 regions of America, districts of America, have a perspective, and you want to talk about your constituents, you want to talk about issues, and yes, we do talk about the big issues as well. But that was a real step forward in opening up the House of Representatives. You know, we're still debating that about the Supreme Court. But people can now tune in to the Senate or the House when it's in session and see what's going on. Now, I've seen some things get worse during my time. As a matter of fact, I was elected to Congress in 1981 at a time when the race towards polarization was in its probably first quarter of the 100-yard dash, probably the 25 yards, with 75 yards left to go, and we're pretty much at probably the most polarized. Now, not the most polarized, because we've had polarized Congresses for a long period of time, and you see the debates, or you go to the old Senate chamber and you see where a House member came over and caned and badly injured a United States senator. Obviously, there have been some very troubled times, but we are at a very polarized time, not only in the Congress of the United States, but it is a representative, and it represents the polarization of our people. I've also seen some things that make me optimistic about the first branch. One reason is that we are fortunate to live in an age when technology is rapidly improving the world around us, so why not Congress as well? Why not Congress as well? Another reason is all of you. Extraordinarily bright, extraordinarily able, extraordinarily technology conversant, and extraordinarily focused on making sure that information is available to our people in a way that they can understand it and digest it. We are fortunate to have such a great community of innovators from both inside and outside Congress who genuinely care deeply about the institution and who work at events like this one to improve it. Some of you may know Steve Dwyer. Steve Dwyer is my Chief Technology Officer in my office. And I need to hurry, is that what you're telling me? Mr. McCarthy is here. He is the majority leader. I used to believe the majority leader was an extraordinarily important person. Because it was me. And so I will try to hurry because I still think it's an extraordinarily important person, and Kevin and I are friends and we work together. Many of you have participated in the hackathons that Kevin and I have hosted together. Many of you have been involved with the Bulk Data Task Force, led by Deputy House Clerk Bob Reeves, who is leading a panel here today. I mentioned Steve Dwyer because Steve Dwyer works with Mr. McCarthy's office, works with the House office, works with all the Democrats, and is a real one of the leaders on getting us into the 21st and maybe even to the 22nd century in terms of our ability to communicate. The task force that I spoke of has brought many of the disparate legislative branch offices together to work on shared modernization product. Their most significant achievement, releasing all legislative data in bulk, has quickly led to the launch of new companies and the creation of new online tools which use that data to affect the legislative process in positive ways. I continue to make technology modernization a priority for my office. I'm proud to have led projects such as WhipWatch. I hope all of you have WhipWatch on your phones, which I think is as good a way to follow what's happening in the House of Representatives as there is available online. And as you know, you can follow votes now in real time. I'm also working across the aisle with Leader McCarthy. He'll talk about that, I'm sure, and others to modernize the executive branch through legislation like the Modernizing Government Technology Act, which the House will be voting on today. I don't think that's a mistake that we're voting on today. I think the majority leader who schedules legislation scheduled it for today, because it was so relevant to what he and I are doing with you today. That bill includes legislation I introduced to authorize a revolving fund that will allow us to quickly upgrade the federal government's technology systems, an idea from President Obama's last budget and the one I pushed for in Congress on his behalf, and that Mr. Issa agreed was a good thing to do, and Mr. Hurd agreed was a good thing to do, and Mr. McCarthy did as well. So this has been a bipartisan effort. By modernizing government technology, we can make the executive branch more efficient, more effective, more secure, more transparent, and more accountable to the American people. I want to thank you again, each and every one of you, for being part of the solution when it comes to addressing our epidemic of outdated government technology systems. It is harmful to the operations of government, of the legislature, but more importantly, harmful to our democracy. I thank you for doing your part to help Congress move forward in this area, to make Congress a stronger institution in these turbulent times. I wish you a very successful program as you explore ways to reboot Congress together. Somebody else, I'm sure, is introducing him, but Kevin, thank you very much for your leadership and for your cooperative and open spirit as we work on these together. I said I was an institutionalist. I don't know whether Kevin was in the room at that point in time, but Kevin is himself an institutionalist in that he cares about not just the partisan differences between the Democrats and the Republicans, but how we create, maintain, and make better an institution critically important and I think we would argue, most critical institution to the survival, the success, and the improvement of our democracy. Thank you for your help on that. Thank you. Okay, good.
Thank you, Mr. Hoyer. We got quite an A-team here, tag teaming better government. We all got a nice bio background on Mr. McCarthy. So without further ado, I would love to welcome to the stage House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy to talk about building a Congress and a government we can see, shape, and understand. Mr. McCarthy.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you. And I think Steny already left, but Steny and I do work very closely together, and especially on technology. And he's been a great help in this, of what we've been able to go through. So I want to talk about a couple different things. Something we started last year called the Innovation Initiative. And this was based off the Jobs Act that we did a number of years ago. What we did in the Jobs Act, we took like 6 bills individually that just looked at ways to modernize in today's society. That became law, even though most of those bills were Republican, but it went through and the president signed it. And when I'd go out through the valley, they'd say that's fundamentally changed the ability to spur economic growth. And when another person had a bill through that was Patrick McHenry, and he and I we got together, we go, why don't we redo that? Create an innovation initiative that looks across the scale of what we can do. And we started last year and we passed 32 bills off the floor. Now you all know it takes 218 votes to pass a bill. You know what our average vote of those 32 bills? 366. So we didn't start with the idea, oh, we got to write a bipartisan bill. We wrote one that dealt with technology, and it became bipartisan because of what the issue was. And it was just good legislation. 9 of those became law. The very first bill signed in for this new Congress was the very last bill signed by President Obama, happened to be mine. He signed it 20 minutes before he was no longer president. He actually signed it down at the Capitol. It was the Talent Act, to actually bring smart talent into government to help us from that prospect. So the goals of the Innovation Initiative: spur economic growth and modernize government for greater effective, efficient, and accountable. And so that's really what we've been going through if you've watched what we've been able to do. And just this year, we've already passed 13 bills. 3 of those have been signed into law. And one of them that we're moving as well is Modernizing Government Travel Act. Even though you're in government and you go in the new movement to travel, if you want to use Lyft or you want to share in that process, just the accounting of it is difficult. We're moving that forward. There's one item I'm working on right now that doesn't take legislation, but it's the core of whether Congress moves into the 21st century. To every single member in Congress, the number one thing they're going to do is represent their constituent, especially in a time where maybe they're dealing with government. So what happens is somebody calls the office, a constituent, says, I have this problem. From the IRS to I got a passport, you name it, anything dealing with the federal government. And you know what our response is? I will send you a release of information in the mail, fill it out, and sign it and send it back, and then I can call on your behalf. So what we're trying to do, make that electronic. Didn't you think that would be the most basic thing? But we still don't do it. When we passed email protection, Yoder's bill, got more than 400 votes. You know the last time we dealt with electronic mail in Congress, the #1 movie in America was Top Gun. But think of how far things have changed. We create as much data in the world today in 2 days as we did from the beginning of time until 2006. But we've only analyzed 0.5% of that data. You know, I watched on Instagram, one of the members put something out about the weather today. And as people travel, you all look at your weather app, right? You ever know how that industry got created? When Reagan was president, he realized we have these government satellites collecting all this data. But government would just keep it. But it was paid for by the people. He said, why don't we release that? Not knowing that it would spur an industry, not knowing that it would create an app in the future, but providing data and letting the private sector find out the best use for it. So now, it never fails wherever you travel. You've got an app to tell you what's going to happen. But also think about how many lives it saves. Not just from the comfort for your ability of how to dress, but knowing what technology and knowing what weather is coming at you. So the other item that we've got coming up, it's all along this modernizing government. And this is where Steny Hoyer has been so great working with us. With Will Hurd, Steny Hoyer, and myself, we've been working on modernizing government. Will Hurd, I don't know if he's spoken to you yet or if he's coming later. He is really a breath of fresh air here in Washington. He understands technology, he understands what needs to be done. He comes from a basis of it's not about party, it's about the government, it's about country first and foremost. But we spend $80 billion a year on technology. 80% of that goes to legacy programs. The VA still uses a program invented in the 1950s. The first thing I learned to code was Fortran, and I think that's advanced if you look over there. I mean, think about it. The VA was created in, what, 1921? And if they had a problem and a claim, they'd write it on a piece of paper. If it was a hot day like today, they'd have fans going. If we got all the news happening in Washington, we'd quickly turn on our radios to try to find out what happened. So today you get your news right away on your phone, right? We got Central Air, and if the VA has a claim, they write it on a piece of paper. If I can get transportation by picking up my phone, and I can rate the person who provided me the service, they can rate me, and I can pay it and have it all electronically, why can't we do that for our veterans? Why do we have to read a story that people are waiting just to have an appointment? Anything that government has so much control of is the least ability and needs the most reform. That's what I found. So there's other ways to look at things, and we should always think different. I mean, I'm looking at what the military and Department of Defense is doing. Have you been following these, the bug bounties? I mean, think about what just transpired over the weekend. The scare from the cyber attack that was affecting so many hospitals, transportations, and not just in one country, but across the world. Well, how can we find those bugs, especially in government, when we're so far behind? Well, you could spend a lot of money on it. And one of the contracts out there, when it came to Department of Defense, was going to cost them $1 million. They were able to do it for $150,000, and they found more bugs than they probably would otherwise. So it engages people to be a part of their government, but more importantly, does it more efficiently, more effective, more accountable, but at a lesser cost. We should utilize that as ideas transfer too. We live in a changing world. Yes, so we should take tradition of the past, but apply it to that changing world where we continue to provide the service to the constituents, but in a more transparent and effective and efficient manner. And technology will allow us to do that. We'll also find so many elements of waste if we look, because it will come out and the platform and let everybody see. I think sunlight is the most positive element when it comes to government. So I thank you for your help in this. I thank you for your endeavor. The only thing I ask, continue to push us. Because nobody really runs for office to saying they're going to bring greater technology to government. But you know what? If your constituents understood how that provided them greater service, and a government that costs less, I think they would champion it. You know what technology has been able to do for efficiency around our country. Just think of what it can do for government. So I thank you for your work. I don't know if we're supposed to take questions or we're supposed to depart. High sign.
If you want to take a question,
I'll take one
the floor is
question.
yours.
Yes.
All right, who has a great question? All right, Betsy.
I just want to say, as a longtime chief of staff, most of which was with Congressman Shays, and now sponsor of this program, I just want to thank you and your staff, and also Leader Hoyer and his staff, who've been equally great to work for. And just thank you for your commitment to this, because it's so important, and it requires your leadership.
Well, I appreciate that, and it does. And I will tell you this. I don't know if Chris Liddell is coming in here, or if you got Jared. The White House is engaged in this. We will be down at the White House with Chris and Jared this week, the Innovation Initiative. And the great thing about it is it's bipartisan. It helps all. And it really needs the push from the House, the Senate, and the White House. And I think you're going to have willing partners in all. And what we should do is, the great thing about technology, constant improvement. There's two philosophies I always tell everybody. Continuing education, and you can never have too many friends in this world. So I want all my friends to help to continue educate government and how to be more efficient, effective, and accountable. Thank you very much.